Can I ask Janet, Secretary Yellen, how would you characterize now? And you've been very, very straightforward in your views and everything. How would you characterize the health of the economy now?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I think I would say let's first look back at the trajectory of the economy over the last 18 months. During that period, the United States has experienced an historic economic recovery. There were 9 million jobs created, over 9 million last year, and we saw the fastest single-year decline in unemployment in our historic record. And I think at the core, this rebound has really reflected the administration's policies, especially the rescue plan and the timely fiscal support it provided, along with efforts that allowed our businesses to reopen and let Americans get back to work. Right now, there are an enormous set of global headwinds, including a war in Europe and successive variants of the pandemic, but our economy remains resilient. So we're clear-eyed about the challenges we face now and in the future, which have especially been driven by global factors like Russia's illegal war in Ukraine, the lingering effects of the pandemic with lockdowns in places like China. Growth is slowing around the world. Inflation remains unacceptably high. And of course, it's your overriding objective, our administration's top priority, to bring it down. As you said, Mr. President, we're at a transitional moment in our economy. We're focusing on moving from a period of rapid recovery that we enjoyed over the last 18 months to now achieving steady, sustainable growth, but without sacrificing the gains we've made. And, economists should look holistically, I think, at data when we evaluate the state of the economy. And we can see, for example, from today's GDP report, that growth in private demand has slowed. That does indicate an economy that is transitioning to more steady and sustainable growth. But job creation is continuing. Household finances, as we've discussed and Brian discussed, household finances remain robust. Consumers are spending. And I believe that in the months to come, with skill and luck, it will be possible to maintain that strength, particularly the strength we enjoy in the labor market, while easing the tightness that has been driving inflation.
Well, there's an old expression, a baseball coach of the Dodgers years ago, Leo DeRocha, said, "I'd rather have Lady Luck sitting on my bench than skill." My grandfather was an All-American football player at Santa Clara in the turn of the century. You say, no, I'd rather have luck and skill on the bench. So we're looking for both. Let me just say before I yield to you, Brian, and we can move on to the rest of the folks here. It's interesting and totally understandable why the vast majority of the American people have no idea what the recovery plan did, what the government did at all. I mean, the reason why we still had teachers in school, kids going to school, the reason why we had cops on the beat, the reason why we had essential workers, states couldn't afford it, cities couldn't afford it, towns couldn't afford it, counties couldn't afford it. So we came up with this rescue plan and gave them billions of dollars to keep the economy in their cities and towns and states moving. And one of the things I fully understand it, like I said, I was raised in one of those households where when the price of a gallon of gasoline went up, it was a topic of discussion around the kitchen table. We weren't poor. We were just typical middle-class family in a 3-bedroom house with 4 kids and a grandpa. But all kidding aside, we lived fine. But it mattered. It mattered whether the price of gasoline went up. One of the things that I find is I look at, and I take it very seriously, the the confidence level of the American people in the economy, and they're so down and they're looking. There's reason to be down, but I started thinking about it. And Brian and you and I talked about it just a little bit. You know, the first year we were able to, with the rescue plan, we were able to send them a check for $8,000. I mean, a check. One, and beyond that, by the way, there's more than that. But if you're making $120,000 and you get a check for $8,000, that's a lot of money. And so it helped save a lot of people in terms of getting thrown out of their homes and rental housing and a whole range of things. But I started thinking about it, just as somebody who's raised a middle-class kid. One year, even though you didn't have the job you have now, even though you didn't get a raise that year, the difference between having a job, having a 5% raise or whatever, 3, 5, 7, whatever it happens to be, in the face of inflation, the price of the pump, although that's down every day so far, but, it's like, whoa, I feel worse off. But then again, I didn't get a check for $8,000 from the government. They just, among other things. Does that make any sense to anybody, or is it just me?
Well, it really makes a huge difference, Mr. President, because, as you said, it kept food on the table, helped people take care of their kids, especially at a time when many were out of school and it was hard to work. And the spending it generated put people back to work. And, as I mentioned, we've seen the biggest stretch of job creation that got America back to work. And we need to bring down inflation, but we need to preserve the success that plan achieved in the labor market.
I know you're all busy as the devil, especially the folks who haven't had a chance to speak yet. I'm sorry I have so many questions, but I have great respect for your collective judgment here.
America has went in a wrong direction since January 20th of 2021, and it was very clear to the world if people did not believe candidate Biden's words in 2020, they certainly saw it immediately on January 20th of 2021 when the Keystone Pipeline was shut down. The pipeline of sending people up from Panama to America was opened up. The exact opposite of what the American people had hoped for. It was followed up by removing sanctions on the Nord Stream line, sending the message to the Germans, hey, you're going to be just okay. As I think my colleague from California stated, and I'll put a finer point on it, I think it was just a couple months ago, the #1 search over in Germany was how to cut firewood. Think about it. #1 search going into search engines is how are we going to cut firewood? As a result of the Germans' dependence on the Russians, which they were warned about. Then we go to the disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan, once again showing American weakness. And then let's just go to the Midwest here, where my colleague just to my left here and where we reside. We had blackout threats for the first time in the state of Wisconsin. Our regional grid operator, no partisan organization that is, they came out for the very first time and said that you are under threat of blackouts in Wisconsin. Why? Because we went to intermittent sources of power. And now we have the Nemadji Trail project. Urge you to search for that project that is proposed for Superior, Wisconsin, that's going to use clean burning, affordable, reliable natural gas to produce electricity to make sure that the lights can be on 24 hours a day as some of the major utilities continue this push to having intermittent sources of power. And then, of course, we have Line 5 that runs across from the twin ports of Superior and Duluth, all the way across northern Wisconsin, northern Michigan. And you have a governor over in Michigan who wants to shut down Line 5 and stop a rebuilding of that line, which would make it much safer through the Mackinac Straits. Weakness, dependence on others. You don't think the Chinese are not watching this? They see this decline of America. And that really is the question before all of us at this point. We all know the 20th century was an American century. The greatness of America, the greatness of the ideas that were put in place at the founding led to the tremendous prosperity in this country. But the question is now in the 21st century, whose century is this going to be? With the decline of America, especially the rapid decline over the last year and a half, with an administration that wants to make us more dependent on other countries around the world, that goes over and begs the Saudis for oil, it's clear the direction that we're going in. President Xi sees that weakness as he gets his unprecedented third term, as he has squelched freedom in Hong Kong, as he's going after the Taiwanese, as he has continued to produce products that we consume in America, including those wind turbines and solar panels with slave labor in Western China. President Xi sees our weakness. When are we going to stop? When are we going to stop and reassess this transition to taking America to a terrible place that is not going to benefit all Americans? All we're asking here is a little bit of transparency, a little bit of accountability. Let's get the information before us of what has happened and the purpose of this ROI. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields. I would disagree with the gentleman. I don't think the country started going bad after January 20th. It started to go bad after January 6th. And I think the American people collectively have given us a pause. And I hope we take advantage of it.
Will the gentleman yield?
I was actually taking a privilege, but I will yield a small part of the privilege because I was going to move on to see who else wanted to talk about the resolution.
Yeah, I would only ask two things in regards to January 6th. Why are Speaker Pelosi's records not available to the committee that were her communications on January 6th? Why was the minority not allowed to be able to name their members to it? And by the way, why is there not a full review of the riots of the Summer of Love of 2020? If we're going to do a comprehensive review, let's do a comprehensive review. The American people are fair-minded.
Okay, reclaiming my time. Ms. Tiffany, we're just going to have to agree to the fact that I don't follow the same social media outlets that you do. And so I don't have privy to your information. And more importantly, I'm not sure I'd want to follow that social media angle. We just disagree. I think it's a philosophical disagreement. Factually, that's another issue that if the facts aren't going to rule, it doesn't matter. I mean,
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, just ask Speaker Pelosi one question. Why will she not share her communications from January 5th and 6th with the committee?
I'll ask that question if you will ask some of your colleagues to waiver their privilege and turn over phone records and other communications dealing with January 6th, sitting colleagues in this building. If you would do that and go specifically and they respond positively.
We are being assaulted by the same group at the FBI and DOJ that just a few years ago declared no reasonable prosecutor would charge crooked Hillary Clinton after she set up a secret illegal server to hide her family's pay-for-play schemes, crammed it full of classified information, allowed it to be plundered by foreign hackers, you know that happened, and then deleted, acid washed, 30,000 emails. Think of that. 30,000 emails. And what else did she do? Boom, with a hammer, smashed her phone systems to smithereens after receiving the highest level of subpoena from the U.S. Congress. Think of that. Think of that. Yet now these same people, the exact same people, are sending the FBI storming through the home of their number one political rival. It's a disgrace like possibly never before. Our country's never seen anything like it. They talk about documents not being properly stored, yet they go in and take documents, dump them on the floor, stage a photo shoot, and pretend that I had done it, like I had put them all over the floor. They took that back after a lot of prodding. Then they put out for public consumption a picture which is seen all over the world. This is what they do. It's called disinformation. These are very dishonest, sick people. Very dishonest people. Americans are sick of the lies, sick of the hoaxes and scams, and above all, sick of the hypocrisy. But our opponents have badly miscalculated. This egregious abuse of the law is going to produce a backlash, the likes of which nobody has ever seen before. Before our very eyes, our beloved country is being taken over by the very people who turn democracies into dictatorships and into ultimately ruination. They think they can divide us, but they can't. Can't divide us. They can't divide us. The MAGA movement is the greatest in the history of our country. And maybe in the history of the world, maybe in the history of the world. In any event, we have no choice. We are trying to save our country because such bad things are happening to our beautiful, beloved America. We will make America great again. I will never turn my back on you. And you will never turn your back on me because we love our nation. And we will save our nation from people who are trying to destroy it. It was not just my home that was raided last month. It was the hopes and dreams of every citizen who I've been fighting for since the moment I came down the golden escalator in 2015. Wanting to represent the people, wanting to stop the massive corruption of our country, and determined to finally, in this world, put America first. I want to put America first, and we did. We did. We did. There's never been a period of time, both before or the China, as we say, and after. From that moment on, I became the enemy of the Washington swamp. For 6 years, the radical Democrat Party, the rhinos, the media, and the deep state have tried relentlessly to stop me and you. First, they fabricated the Russia scam. You saw it was a total fabrication. Now they all admit it. Then we had impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, and now these same exact people at Justice and the FBI, the same people, along with outside scum, are at it again with the raid of my home. They just go on, and they have to be stopped. We have to spend time on our country, not on defending ourselves against scams. Thank you. Think of it about Russia and the Mueller. No collusion, right? Came in, no collusion. That was your decision after 2.5 years, no collusion. I could have told them that after the first hour, and they could have said that because they had the laptop from hell, which had everything, so they knew immediately. But it went on. But think of this, and I tell this story on occasion, very seldom, because it's too sad to tell. But I tell this story because it's very important. Russia was a hoax. It was developed by Hillary Clinton and a group of people, small group around a kitchen table, as a way of explaining why she lost an election.